You're listening to Level Up with Melissa Zalouf.
Welcome back, everyone, to this week's episode of Level Up. Today on the show, we have Vincent Hart Keating, Managing Director at Homa Games, a mobile games publisher based in Paris. Today on the show, we're going to talk about hyper-casual games, that evergreen subject that never seems to die. We want to look at kind of where the genre is today, how has it evolved? People sort of expected it to die or to be a flash in the pan, but clearly it hasn't. But before we jump into that, maybe tell us a little bit about yourself and about Homa Games. Both of you started in BidMotion, so how and why the transition to becoming a game publisher?
Yeah, so me, from the beginning, I've always been into gaming. I used to be a big gamer myself. And my first professional experience was actually in a French gaming studio. I was 15.
That's early.
That's very early. But then, I started my career by creating the Hitfox group, where at the beginning we focused on free-to-play games. Quite quickly, it was a rise of mobile, and I created a company for mobile. Later on, I joined BidMotion, where we were focused on user acquisition technologies for mobile apps. So we did user acquisition, many mobile applications, and a lot of gaming applications as well. And at that time, we started also to do user acquisition for hyper-casual games. So we said, okay, there is a trend, some companies are achieving great success doing hyper-casual. They are not developing the games, they are not doing the UA themselves, so maybe we can give it a shot. And me, I've been pushing for years to launch our own mobile apps. So we decided to go for it, to start with mobile games and hyper-casual games, because we saw a big trend here. So initially, beginning of 2018, my colleague Olivier Lebas and myself, we started to spend 10% of our time contacting developers.
I thought you were going to say spending 10% of your time playing hyper-casual games, just to make sure you found the right ones.
I actually play a lot now, sometimes more than I should. But we started to spend some of our time working with gaming developers, finding interesting games and doing a few tests, learning how to monetize an app. Because basically, we were really strong in user acquisition, knew all the concepts of monetization, but then we needed to improve in the business development, talk with the best developers and in game design to help them improve their games. So after a couple of initial tests, May 2018, that's where we decided to invest massively in this project and created the brand Homa Games. And since then we published around 10 games. 4 of them have reached the top charts this year in 2019. So that's a really good beginning. We now have a team of 15 people who all love games. Hopefully we are building better games.
So you say you have sort of game designers on hand as well. You've got monetization UA and game design experts. Is that the kind of full complement of services that you're offering to a given developer when you're publishing their game?
Yeah, I think there are 4 phases. The first one is the human contact that we have with the developer. Then when we have games that show potential, the game design team will work on it to improve all the metrics. And then it falls in the end of the UA and monetization team with the support of the creative team. So we have an in-house creative studio that produces hundreds of creatives per week to support the acquisition of the games. So I would say that good account management, good relationship, plus game design, plus user acquisition, monetization, and creative capabilities, those are the ingredients for a successful publishing company.
And do you find that monetization and user acquisition inside Homa work very closely together, or are they kind of more siloed?
No. It's actually one user acquisition and monetization manager per game. So the same person handles both. It's really 2 sides of the same coin. And for us, it doesn't really make sense to have them separated.
I think that's something that's happening across the industry. Certainly, we're seeing it more and more, even in larger game companies where the roles were traditionally siloed. More and more, you're having executives who are doing one side take over ownership of the other as well, because growth is approached in a much more holistic manner. But anyway, we should probably start talking about hyper-casual. Do you think that the explosion of hyper-casual was part of why you guys decided now is the right time to open a publishing studio?
Yes, absolutely. This is a new genre, and the specificity of hyper-casual today is that everybody is a potential hyper-casual player. Hyper-casual game is for everybody, so the market is really huge. So it's a combination of very simple apps, very easy to produce. Best games have been created in a week or maximum amounts, a massive market, and a unique method of work. I think that's the combination of those 3 aspects that make it successful today. When I say successful, just looking at the top charts, we see a lot of hyper-casual games today here. But it's not only because the games are simple, it's also because there is a very professional method behind it. So I think those 3 aspects make it successful, and that's what was very appealing to us.
When you say method, what do you mean? Are you talking about kind of the business model of hyper-casual, or more the creation of very addictive games with a low barrier to entry?
I'm talking about the testing methods. In hyper-casual, publishers test absolutely everything before picking a game. And when we have one game that has potential in terms of game designs, we test tens of variations of the same game. We test like many different features. We test absolutely everything. And then we pick the best version. Then when it comes to user acquisition, again, we test different building systems, create a lot of them. Monetization, same. We'll build different waterfalls. We'll test everything, which is great, by the way, with ironSource mediation, is that there is this A/B testing feature. When we want to implement a change, we can test it before it goes live. So the hyper-casual method is based on massive testing and a very short amount of time. Like testing hundreds of versions of the same app within 2 weeks is something that most of the companies cannot do usually, but that's something that hyper-casual publisher managed to do.
Right, so in many ways, hyper-casual has kind of taken advantage of the increasing sophistication and data available in the industry and testing methods available in the industry today. So there was kind of like a constellation of vital phenomena where you have kind of more people are playing games, hyper-casual publishers have cracked testing in maybe a way that traditional games have yet to do or just weren't doing because they didn't see the need. And you're just moving faster, I guess.
Yeah, one thing in comparison to classic games, I would say, when you build a big game, you are blind. You have to build it, and then you will see if people like it. Hyper-casual, it's the opposite. You build a prototype in 24 hours, and if you see that people like it, then you invest. So that's also like this reversing that makes hyper-casual possible. So that's why it would be impossible to have the same processes with very complex apps, because the iterations would take like weeks to get.
Right. Marketability is much more a focus of hyper-casual process than other more classic games, as you've put it. I don't know if everyone was saying it was going to die, but certainly I think people expected hyper-casual or are expecting hyper-casual to evolve in some way. I'm not sure if that's necessarily going to be the case. Certainly the growth you've seen at Homa Games implies that hyper-casual has a very generous runway ahead of it still. Do you think we can expect to see the genre die out, evolve, become more casual, more complex in terms of its mechanics?
The genre will be there as long as people want to play simple games. I hear a lot of judgment as well on it. If you look at the game when it's finished, it looks simple, but it's actually extremely complex what happened behind. And we should not judge, because like that's the type of game that people want to play today. As long as the people want to play those games, the genre as itself will be successful. The players, on the other hand, they will evolve for sure, because it's a market where almost no barrier. We've proved it like in 6 months. We have some games in the top charts. And so I think the main barriers is like the methods, the process, the technologies. Those are barriers, yes. And we have like really good technologies to do that, but that doesn't prevent anyone from entering the market in 6 months. And many people are entering the market. So at some point, yes, there will be a consolidation. Yes, the market will be saturated. And what will happen is that some players will die potentially, because the fact that we are all bidding for the same users with the price, some of us will be able to afford like bidding higher. But what's very likely is that many players will move out from hyper-casual to explore other gaming genres, casual, idle, mid-core.
Speaking of players of hyper-casual games, do you think that today, or suburban mum who's playing the latest hyper-casual game is 3 or 4 months later going to start playing a casual game? Is hyper-casual kind of a gateway drug for other categories?
I really have my doubts. I've heard this a lot of times, and I've seen a couple of studies that tends to show that this is going to happen and this is happening. But then when I think about my mom, and she's a really good tester, like if she understands how to play the game in 3 seconds, then I know that the game will probably work. But she won't understand a casual game or mid-core game. And I think this audience will always be more limited than the hyper-casual game audience. So some hyper-casual gamers will convert.
So a limited potential for hyper-casual to grow the overall gaming population. So I know you guys are starting to sort of evolve into developing idle and IO games. When did you decide to sort of start diversifying, and why?
We started very recently to diversify with Idle World. No, this is basically our first attempt to see what we can do outside of purely hyper-casual. The reasoning is simple, like as we have discussed, like there will be a consolidation, it will be more and more difficult to be super competitive in this industry. There is another aspect is that I think that our competitors in hyper-casual, they are the best user acquisition and monetization team in the world. Because of this crazy competition, it pushed all the players in the past year. It started with Voodoo, a lot of professionalism in this area. And now with all the new joiners, we develop like very sophisticated technologies to improve user acquisition and monetization. I think they are way ahead of other verticals. So today we managed to get good results in hyper-casual, fighting against the best. Tomorrow, let's see what we can do against people who didn't have yet to improve their processes that much because they didn't have the same crazy competition. let's see if we can also adapt our methods.
Well, that sounds very smart. I want to talk about Europe and hyper-casual because it seems as though there's a high concentration of very, very successful, the most successful hyper-casual studios are in Europe. Do you think that's not a coincidence?
I've been thinking about that. One of the reasons might be that Ketchup, a French company, started this business model, and that the first gaming studios were really used to this business model and to build prototypes, send it to a publisher in just a couple of days. They were probably based in France because of Ketchup, and then maybe later in Europe. So then when we have new players coming in, first of all, the business model is very well known in France for hyper casual, and the gaming studios that are educated to this business are there. And they were ready to send prototypes to other companies because at that time, Ketchup, really small team, they could not handle all the requests from the developers. So this created the space for new players. And then those new players got worldwide attention, and now we see players coming from everywhere.
Talking about technologies that you've mentioned several times, technology and kind of sophisticated or smart strategy when it comes to user acquisition and monetization are a core part of why any successful game today is successful, in part because they're doing those two things really, really well. What tools do you think are kind of critical to Homa's success?
Our what we call the auto bidder, so user acquisition tool that will calculate the perfect bid for every campaign at the app level, so a very granular level. Here we are very lucky. We come from BitMotion, who builds technologies for user acquisition, and we have the full support of the tech team, and they build crazy products in 1-2 weeks when we ask them to. So that really gives us an edge. So right now we inherited from a lot of knowledge and existing technologies developed at BitMotion for the other clients. We improve them for hyper casual. So today we have a tool that tells us exactly how to optimize the waterfalls. We have a tool that tells us exactly which bid to place for which campaign, and that can place the bid automatically. We have our data science team analyzing the performance of the creatives per campaign.
Sounds like a dream. I need this technology team build it for me 2 weeks later.
That's the best case sometimes. No, basically our technologies allow us to be precise at scale. That's also the success of hyper casual. Very precise, massive scale.
I know you guys have also a creative studio. What does creative optimization look like at Homa? You said you guys are producing 100 creatives a week?
Per game, yeah. It's fairly simple. So initially when we launch a title, we'll think about 10, 15 concepts. We'll think or we'll use existing concepts that have proven successful. And then, of course, we'll measure everything. And if we see that, for instance, a specific message gives a better traction, we'll try message with a variation of different videos in the background. If we will identify the winner and we'll make more iterations, changing some parameters of this one, and again until we get the best possible ad. And at the same time, we'll always inject in the mix some new concepts, and all the ideas are welcome. We have to be creative and then analyze all the performance and more iterations.
And does this happen in soft launch as well, or only once a game is launched?
It starts in soft launch, but the really massive work starts when the game is live. You
actually use ad mediation in a very unique and innovative way as part of this focus on testing. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, absolutely. We use the quote report of ironSource to measure the direct impact of a new version of the app on the LTV of the users directly, which in the end is the end goal. All the rest, it's intermediary KPIs, like number of impression per session, and so on. The CPM, all that leads to the average revenue per user and the LTV per user. And using this cohort report, we can see instantly if we improve the LTV at D0 or D1, D3, D7 of an app by changing the version. So not only this allows us to measure the impact of versions, but it also allows us to identify very efficiently potential issues. If in the morning we see, using the cohort report, that the LTV D0 dropped, then instantly we have to look into details. If it's related maybe to a new network that we implemented in the waterfall, and maybe they have issues showing ads. Might be many other reasons, but we have this kind of alert just by looking at the cohort report.
I read an interesting article yesterday from Mobile Dev Memo about retiring LTV as a metric, that it kind of belongs to sort of Act 1 of the mobile economy. And Act 2 is just not as fast moving, or players are playing for longer, and so a lifetime can be a much longer concept than it once was. Leaving LTV aside, because I think it's probably a much more complex discussion, what is the most important metric you guys are looking at when you're evaluating the success of a game? And is it internal or external? Is it revenue from inside the game and retention, or is it a marketability associated metric like IPM if you guys are using it?
So what I'm going to say is really not sexy, but we'll also look at profits generated by the game. One important thing to understand is that we, Homa Games, we are a company and we are growing fast, but our partners, the developers, most of the time they are like 2 people. That's most of the teams we work with. For those people, like, a game that is a success will change their life. And if they work with us, we also want them like to hold their trust, because today, like, there are many players and they trusted us, they send the games to us. So that's why also in the end, like, we want it's for our partners. I think today we give some of the best conditions on the market. It's also because we really want fair deals with the developers, and we want them to get enough money to then later produce like the games of their dream without having the financial pressure. So yes, in the end, the revenues generated by the game and the profits generated by the game will be very important for us and for the developers we work with.
Maybe unsexy, very laudable. Well, thank you very much. It's been a very interesting episode. Tune in next week, guys, for more interesting interviews with game industry executives.